Hey everybody, KC here. So, well, I don't know. Well, not that long ago, I had a chance to do a Zoom conversation with the CEO of City Girl Coffee, a coffee brand where they actually source all of their beans from coffee plantations that are run and owned by women, which I just thought was fascinating. Listen, part of the reason I got onto City Girl Coffee is I drink their coffee every morning, right? It is as essential a product in my household as almost anyone I can think of. But after I did that interview, I thought, there's another product that is absolutely essential around here, and that would be Graeter's ice cream. I love Graeter's ice cream. I probably love Graeter's ice cream a little bit too much. I love their black raspberry chocolate chip. I love their mocha chocolate chip. Um, Mrs. Content Guy loves their mint chocolate chip. And let me tell you something. Their Madagascar vanilla bean. Oh, it's so good. It's a whole different kind of vanilla. So I actually wanted to do a conversation with Richard Graeter, which you're about to see. Two interesting things I think you should pay attention to in this interview. One is the importance of storytelling, because he tells a great story about the brand's origin, which tells me a couple of things. First of all, how important it is to be able to tell that story, which helps to differentiate your product beyond the actual product itself. And the other thing is how retailers ought to work with manufacturers to tell their stories more effectively to drive sales. So that's number one. The second thing we talked about that I think is really important, worth paying attention to, is how Graeter's is working to maintain the relationship with the consumer, even when the consumer is ordering online, right? And not just outsourcing that to outside delivery companies. And how that's important, why it's important, and how they're achieving it. So those are two really important things to pay attention to, I think, in this interview with Richard Graeter. I hope you enjoy it. Richard Graeter, welcome to Morning Newsbeat.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So I've already explained to the Morning Newsbeat audience what a big fan I am of your product, probably too much so in some ways. First of all, first question, what's it been like dealing with the pandemic?
It's been interesting. We have, in spring when it first hit, we were worried that we'd be shut down and wouldn't even be able to stay in business. But fortunately, ice cream is, it's an essential food item. So we were able to stay open for carryout. And ice cream is kind of a carryout. It's naturally a carryout business. You come in, you get your ice cream cone, and you leave. So we were really pretty fortunate that we were able to stay open. We certainly had to adapt to all the COVID procedures, the cleaning, the masks, all that. But our team did a really good job doing it. So we've managed to do pretty well. The other thing is we certainly sell ice cream through the grocery store and mail order direct to people's homes. And those two businesses really took off. So at the end of the day, we're in a pretty good spot. We just got here in a very different way than we had planned to get here at the beginning of the year.
So I'm fascinated, and I'm one of your direct-to-consumer customers.
Mhm.
Has that been an active sort of, have you been really working hard to grow that segment of the business?
Well, we've been shipping ice cream for, gosh, over 20 years. And so it's just been a good, stable part of our business. We do 50% of our business for the year between Thanksgiving and Christmas, so very holiday driven. But since COVID, it's been like Christmas every day because the orders have just been, I think it's up 400 or 500%. So we normally ship a few, maybe 100 boxes a day, and now we're shipping sometimes 1,000. So it's just been a real explosion because people are staying home.
Well, it is as far as I'm concerned, it's totally essential, and it is the ultimate in comfort food. You've also, it just so happened, you've launched an app recently. Tell me about that and why that was important.
We did. So we have a Graeter's app on your phone, and my phone just chimed. So we were launching an app that would let you order on your phone directly with Graeter's to get ice cream made at the store and then brought to your doorstep. So, there's certainly services like DoorDash and Uber Eats where you can order through them, but this app let the customer order directly with us. And that way we kept the control of the customer relationship. So we were just happened to be rolling that out right before COVID hit. But then that app had another little piece to it that we never intended to use. I mean, we probably spent months getting this app ready to go, and this other little piece we could turn on that would let people order and pick up curbside. And gosh, when we first were working on this, we thought, who the heck would want to do that? They'll just come into the store and get it. Well, as it turned out, with COVID, it was a really fortuitous happenstance that we could turn that on, and it is part of what helped us to really negotiate these last few months. And it was, like I said, I'd love to say it was visionary leadership, but it was really just kind of dumb luck. But sometimes I'd rather be lucky than good, and this was one of those times.
Why is it important? Explain a little bit about what's the difference for me as a consumer if I go directly to you and use your app as opposed to going through DoorDash? And how is it different? And B, why is that important?
Well, it's different because the customer is ordering on our app rather than through a third party. So we can control that customer experience. The other big part of it is we know who that customer is. I mean, if someone's ordering through Uber Eats, we give it to the Uber Eats guy. But when the customer is ordering through us, we know who they are. We can follow up with them. If there's, they can earn points on the app, which they can use. It's just all part of the total customer experience. You always want to know who your customer is, and you want to know who the end user is and not the middleman. So this app really let us control that relationship and make sure that we could deliver to them the service and be responsible for that service. So that's why we're really happy with it. It's worked out great.
I mean, having curbside pickup may have been dumb luck, but it seems to me that it was visionary for you to say, we want to control the customer experience. That continues to be sort of my issue with the likes of Instacart or DoorDash or whoever, is that retailers, restaurants, whoever, put themselves in the position where they can potentially be disintermediated out of the relationship, and that's a really dangerous place to be.
Absolutely. I mean, the customer pays the bills, and you want to maintain that relationship so you can make sure that you're in a position to make sure that they get the experience that they deserve.
So, and when part of owning the customer experience means having greater control over how you tell your story.
Right.
And it's always struck me that the Graeter story is is a very interesting one. Can you give me the audience the Reader's Digest version of the Graeter story? What it is that makes you unique?
Well, two things. One, we're celebrating our 150th year in business. So we were established in 1870 by my great grandfather. So there's not many businesses that have been around 4 generations. And the other part of that story is, and I think it's really intimately related to the fact that we're a family business, is how we make our ice cream. We make it in something called a French pot freezer, which 100 years ago, that's how the folks made ice cream. You all had all these neighborhood ice cream parlors. They made it in the back, sold it in the front, and lived upstairs like my great grandparents did. But ice cream, when it became commercialized in the 20s and 30s, industrialized is, I think, a better way to say it, it became mass produced. Our family did not change how we made the product. We still to this day make ice cream in 2.5 gallon batches. I mean, the difference is I have 37 machines running 20 hours a day, but it makes a different, unique product, and nobody else on the planet makes ice cream in this way. So, and I think if we weren't still a family business, we never would have stuck with that process, because it's really expensive and time consuming. It limits how fast and how far you can go, but it's the only way we know how to make ice cream. And so my great grandmother, I think, had the opportunity, the first opportunity in our family to change, but she didn't. And every generation since then, up to and including mine, have stuck by that process. And that's what makes Graeters Graeters.
Also, I was reading somewhere that while it was your great grandfather who started the business, it was actually your great grandmother was very, very important in terms of driving early growth of the company.
She was. She took over the business in 1920 when my great grandfather was tragically struck and killed by a car in Cincinnati. And so here you have a widow in an era that was not very friendly to women entrepreneurs. but that did not stop her. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. And she did the one thing a couple years after she took over the business that her husband hadn't managed to do in the 50 years he ran the business, and that was open a second store. And then she opened a third and a fourth, and all through the 20s and even all through the Great Depression, she opened up new neighborhood ice cream parlors. And in fact, she opened up the plant where we used to make ice cream back up until 2010 when we opened our new plant. We were still making ice cream in the plant that she bought in the middle of the Great Depression. So she died before I ever, 10 years before I was born. But from the stories from my father, she was a force to be reckoned with, and she didn't let anything get in her way. And her way again was she stuck to that French pot process.
So let me ask you a question. So I'm a fan. I order some. Sometimes I will order. Via your website. But sometimes I'll go to the store, and I have 2 stores near me that carry your product, Whole Foods, and there's a local independent. The independent tends to have a few more SKUs than they do. The thing that always occurs to me when I'm looking at their freezer, and there you are, and there's a lot of other products there too, right? And some of them are mass produced, and some of them would be considered gourmet. I mean, they're all over. But it always occurs to me that one thing that retailers are not particularly good at is telling the story, right? I have no idea why your product is made differently, that your product is made differently than the product that's to your left and to your right. And it occurs to me at a time when retailers are trying to differentiate themselves, if you've got a differentiated product, there's got to be ways for both parties to be able to tell the story more effectively to drive sales. Is that something that you think, retailers could or should do a better job at? And how do we get retailers to think more about storytelling in their businesses?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it is something we have struggled with, from the beginning. When we first, in Cincinnati, we never had the problem because we've been here 150 years. Everybody knew us and knew our story. And even if they didn't know the story, that didn't matter because they knew the ice cream. But when we started getting on the shelf in other markets where people didn't know us, I hired agencies. I really struggled with what can we do to tell our story? And you're kind of limited. I mean, you're in a freezer door with all these other products. So you could, if you pay a lot of money, you can get a sticker on the door or a shelf talker or maybe something on the floor. But there's all this other noise in the stores too. And I found that those were really expensive and really not worth it. For us, fortunately, it's word of mouth. I mean, people know our product, and if they don't know our product, they hear about our product from somebody. That, and then of course, social media is a big thing now. And so we really look to those, I would say, those avenues external to the store to tell our story than right there on shelf, because it's darn difficult. Like the story I told about our family and our great grandmother and that process, that's a lot of story. You really can't fit that into the parameters of the retail store easily. Sometimes I think in some stores we actually had a little TV that ran a little video, but then again, if you're shopping and you're busy, are you going to sit there and watch a 30-second video? Probably not. So I kind of tell people the best way to tell is just open the freezer door, and pick up a pint of Graeter's and pick up a pint of somebody else's, and you can feel the difference right there. I mean, ours weighs more because it doesn't have air in it, but other than that, it's a challenge. I mean, that first moment of truth on shelf, you're relying on the packaging, not the contents, but really these external things that, other people might do a better job at packaging, even though their product isn't better. But, for Graeter's, I need to get a spoonful of our ice cream into your mouth, and then I think I have you. You're sold. But that first step is tough. It's a challenge.
Yeah, and it's a shame in some ways, and part of the problem is that so many retailers have maybe 40,000 items, and it's like how do I can't tell everybody's story, which is one of the reasons actually I would argue that retailers actually ought to edit that significantly so they can start to tell stories more effectively. But just the story about your great grandmother, it's like I mean, I mean, that is such an interesting story, and it has a lot of, current relevance in terms of how people think about women. I
Mhm.
mean, she's a role model, and I
She's
do think
yeah.
that you got to figure out a way. And that's one of the reasons I want to talk to you. I'm just a bug on the idea of telling stories, and hopefully somebody who's carrying your product is going to see this video and say, "Oh, we could tell that story and sell a lot more ice cream. It would be really good for graders, but also would be really good for us."
Yeah.
So,
Well,
so
the other thing is for retail stores, it's almost where you are. If you're in the set, it's yeah, it's harder to compete. But if you get the end cap, so that's kind of, if you have sometimes we have special flavors or something that we can get an end cap, and that or you pay for the promotions. Now you've got the premium space, and oftentimes then you have more opportunity to tell a story. The other thing we've done is partnered with other similar brands that, not ice cream, but we've done one, I think, with a root beer company, and it's a family root beer company, and Graeter's and this root beer kind of went together, so a co-partnership, and you both can tell your story a little better. So you kind of look for those unique opportunities and leverage them whenever you can.
what about being relevant going forward in terms of the next generation? How do you go about doing that? I think I read something about you. It wasn't a root beer company; it was actually a beer company where you made a stout, which
we
sounds really good to me. I don't think I was ever able to order that online.
Well, no, we can't sell that online, but yeah, and we are, craft beer is really on trend. I love craft beer. I'm a fan, German roots. And funny that the craft beer today, that's all, what's craft beer? It's made in small batches, it's made with these unique recipes, and there's great variation and innovation and flavor development. Well, that's just like craft ice cream. And there's a local brewery in Cincinnati. We're blessed to have a number of them, but I was in one just across the river in Covington, and their name is Braxton. And a mutual friend introduced me to the guy who owned it, and we had a couple of beers, and those beers can be a little strong. And by the second beer, we thought it'd be a heck of a great idea. That, let's turn some ice cream into beer. And so we took our flagship black raspberry chocolate chip ice cream, and they have a great brewmeister, and it inspired him. They actually used the black raspberry puree, the same stuff we use in our ice cream. And I think they put some toasted cocoa beans in it, and they brewed a black raspberry chocolate milk stout. And it was phenomenal, and people just loved it. And what's neat is it got the brewery their beers into Kroger, because just like ice cream, you really got to compete for that space. Well, when it came out in the media that we were collaborating, Kroger said, "Hey, we want that beer," and so that really helped Braxton get on shelf. And for us, so for them, I think it got them publicity and got them into Kroger. For us, it got us in front of some of these new, the younger customers who are into craft beer. So here's this, this 150-year-old ice cream company doing something really neat and cool. And so it really, I think, helped us both out. And it was just the start. I think we are up to 6 different flavor collaborations. This summer we had a key lime pie ale. This fall we're releasing, the brewery is releasing in October a pumpkin pie, which I kind of get tired of all the pumpkin stuff, but I love our pumpkin ice cream. And this pumpkin ale, it's not like a Halloween latte. It's really yummy without being too pumpkiny or too sweet. And they just do, it's just fun. I mean, it's a fun collaboration. And I really think that's, something that a small family brand is maybe a little more empowered to do. This literally came about over a beer, and a few weeks later we were doing it. And I think bigger brands, that would be a 3-year research project.
I don't know if you're making me more hungry or more thirsty. Well, this is great. And the other thing about that is, and here's the thing to go back to what we were talking about before, that's another story, which is great, right? That's what so many of these products depend on. They may be differentiated products, but if they have a differentiated story, it's a powerful sales tool.
Yeah.
So, well, listen, Richard Graeter, I really appreciate it. And what I can say is I'm glad you're making your product, because I'm going to keep ordering it and keep eating it. So thanks so much for being on Morning Newsbeat.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.